Welcome to the Microsoft Executive Spotlight series. My colleague Ted Kemp and I will be hosting a series where we will be talking to executives about how they're empowering Canadian companies every day and partnering with Microsoft. Today's guest is Clint Melvin. He's a well-known commercial business leader, executive, president, and chief operating officer at a company called London Drugs. London Drugs Limited is a privately held Canadian retail pharmacy company based out of British Columbia. In addition to pharmaceutical services, London Drugs also provides sales for electronics, housewares, cosmetics, and groceries as well. London Drugs have over 80 stores across Canada. They employ more than 8,000 staff dedicated to providing customers with a superior shopping experience. Clint plays a key role within the executive management team of London Drugs. He's responsible for contributing to the corporate strategy and the day-to-day execution of the company strategy and direction. Driving a growth theme and providing great service that derives from ensuring frontline people have the skills, the knowledge, and the desires to excel. Ted and I have invited Clint on this call to talk a little bit about his business, his experience, and his partnership with Microsoft. And on that note, Clint, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Thank you, Rashawn. Thank you, Ted. It's a pleasure.
Starting things off, can you share a little bit with me about your background and your role at London Drugs?
Well, in Canada, they often call retail the accidental career, and therefore I'm probably a pretty typical retailer. I had no intentions of joining London Drugs. In fact, I'd never heard of them before. I grew up in a small town up on the British Columbia coast, and you had to come into the Vancouver area or elsewhere if you wanted to do post-secondary education. And so I needed to get some beer money, like any typical starving student, and had to walk by this drugstore that I'd never heard of, and I joined as a part-time stock guy, and here I am 37 years later, still with them.
That's fantastic. I like that. Beautiful part of the country, by the way.
Thank you.
Very jealous, to say the least. So what I'd like to do is kind of jump right in and talk to you a little bit about your business model, right, as an organization. And you certainly carry an incredibly large responsibility today. You serve vast amounts of customers across Canada. Could you just share with us some of the drivers and principles that you apply today? And I think in this environment, the term customer experience really comes to mind as something that I think a lot of firms in the retail space are trying to center around.
Yeah, for sure, and with good reason. You know, London Drugs has been it's a very unique business model. Like most business leaders, I travel the world, and I've yet to find anything exactly like us, and the closest is some European models. The esteemed professor Ken Wong of the Smith School of Business at Queen's University has often used London Drugs as a bit of an example of a business that shouldn't succeed by the theoretical books of being, very focused on one area and being very good. But through this eclectic product mix and mix of services that we offer, we built a very unique and loyal customer base. Internally, we call it the diversity dilemma. And I think one of the great motivators right now is the fact that we compete against everyone in the world. Is how we look at it. Today, with the press of a screen or a voice command, you are looking up whatever we sell against anyone in the world. And so the idea of selection for most retailers being a distinguishing factor is not the business model that you can make it on in the future. Yes, it still has its advantages, which I'll talk to, but it's no longer the deciding factor. So you have to find ways that allow you to connect uniquely with your customers. And for us, that's finding unique and different product, and also combining it with services that are very hard to digitize and receive anywhere else. And it's that unique blend which is allowed London Drugs to enjoy the reputation with its customers. But you can never rest for a minute because someone else is always trying to replicate or knock you off.
I'd like to drill into that, Rashawn, if I could for just
Absolutely.
a second, because I wrote it down. You should not have succeeded. The diversity dilemma. I think that's really fascinating, and I'm just curious if maybe you could share with us, in that kind of a scenario, how do you stay in front of the customers and really understand what it is that they want, so that this model of yours is successful. Because you're right. I mean, there's so many different products that you could potentially offer.
Yeah, there's so many different business models out there that people see, Ted, and you know, I think that there's these beliefs that you have to be gargantuan to compete. You've got to be an Amazon, a Walmart, an AliExpress, a Carrefour, any of these ones with massive scale. And it certainly gives them huge advantage over London Drugs in many other areas. But it also makes it very difficult to understand your customer. And there becomes a certain point where you have to become either allow your customer to go elsewhere, or to double down and try and find ways of being unique and different, and really connect with your customer. And I think that's why you continue to see a lot of strong regional retailers around the world. In many cases, you may have never heard of them, but they can be a dominant retailer in a geography. And that's as much due to the fact that they really know their customer. And so we spend a lot of time both doing classical research, quantitative and qualitative research, but also just spending some time talking to customers, answering customers' emails, being available to our store staff, who of course are the ultimate ambassadors for the London Drugs brand, and hearing what's working and what's not, and constantly trying to adapt and evolve and ensure that regionally that you are as connected with your customer needs as you possibly can be, and taking advantage of opportunities that much larger retailers may not be able to.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, that's incredible context, Clint. I mean, I'm sure it's a highly competitive space, and I love the uniqueness of the customer service and the research and analysis approach that you take, right? Yeah. How do you set yourself apart from your competitors?
Well, a lot of it comes down to trust, and every retailer, of course, strives for that for the most part. But again, the combination of services and products that we do sell, plus what we do in the community, not just recently, but since, you know, London Drugs is 75 years old. It's owned by one of the oldest retailing family. We're a private family company, as you said at the outset, that's 118 years old. So we have a lot of things in our DNA that are about trust. And we've been rated multiple times by many surveys as the most trusted brand of any business or any organization in the province of British Columbia. And it's not something we take lightly at all, to be able to sort of build that trust while being unique. I'll give you an example of sort of, just if I can, of something Absolutely. That many of us are probably yearning to travel when these restrictions lift and get back to life as we know it. And so one of the things that makes London Drugs unique and stands out is how you can, in a very relatively small space compared to a very large retailer, say like Loblaws or Superstore, Costco, any of those, is the fact that we can take care of all your needs as best as we possibly can. And so using travel, so let's say that you've got this idea of traveling after the pandemic. This is so exciting for you. So you're going to book an appointment with one of our specialized travel vaccination pharmacists that is, world certified to make sure you're protected. That may include picking up the fact that one of the medications you're on requires a specialized sunscreen that doesn't interact with your medication, so you're not halfway around the world and realize that that medication or bug spray that you're using is actually going to cause you a problem. And we carry that specialized dermatological skincare in our cosmetics or beauty business. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, you can get all your travel necessities, including luggage, with us. And during that consultation with our pharmacist or our beauty advisor, we find out that this is a trip of the lifetime for you. And so we can do your passport or visa updated, and we guarantee its quality like no one else can do. And then through that discussion of your passion about this travel, we find out that perhaps it's an active vacation, so we can sell you the latest GoPro or underwater camera that is unique and difficult to get. Or we find out that you're already a very good photographer, and we can get you all the way into a professional camera setup, which we're an authorized pro dealer for a lot of the camera equipment. But of course, like any images, you're excited and you want to share them as quickly as possible when you're traveling, and through our computer department, we can set you up with the right equipment. We can have you attend one of our classes about how to share your photos, more importantly, how to back them up so you don't lose those trip of a lifetime, and make sure that it's done securely with family and friends. And maybe when you return, those memories are so special you want them to be made into a high-end coffee table book, or you're a professional photographer and you require a 4x8 architectural aluminum panel. We do all of that at London Drugs, and that's just one of the many ways that we take care of our customers every day.
There's just multiple points, touch points along that value chain. It's fascinating to hear you talk about that, right?
Talk about experience, right?
Yeah, the beginning to the end in all the points, because you as I was listening to you, I'm like, yeah, of course, but I never kind of strung it together in one value chain. That was really interesting, and I love the fact that you talk about trust, because that's a word that we don't take very lightly here at Microsoft, right? We like to say that we run on trust. And it's a powerful word, right? It really does carry a lot of meaning in the market today.
Yeah, we spend a lot of time trying to teach our management, and it's the same relationship we have with all our technology partners or our retail partners. Is, look, for the most part, most of our relationships go pretty smoothly, but the test of trust, and are you going to live up to your potential and what you say you're going to do when things go wrong? And do you look at it as an us versus them, or do you figure out, put that problem in front of you so you can both mutually solve it together? And we look at that, whether it's a customer experience in our stores or a relationship with one of our partners.
I love that. Character counts, right?
It does. It always
does. Absolutely. Okay, so let me switch just a little bit and talk about the ever-present elephant in the room, which is the pandemic. How has that impacted you? How has that made you think differently about how you service your customers?
Yeah, so I mean, like any part of the pandemic, I think it's what is it, Mike Tyson's famous saying, everyone's plan falls apart to the first punch in the face.
Oh, yeah.
My son's an officer with the Canadian Armed Forces, and he always talks about how everyone's plan falls apart with the first contact with the enemy. And I think both the pandemic, for most organizations, regardless if they're private or public or business or government institutions, found that out. From our perspective, obviously it came down to really evaluating our strengths and weaknesses and asking ourselves some of those value-based questions. You know, would we live up to our promises in the communities that we've served? We considered it a real privilege to be in a situation to service our communities, and launched a number of positive business initiatives. Some of your business initiatives that you've we're working on get really tested was a good idea. I'll give you an example, is that I mentioned that we have a very strong and well-known computer business, and we have been for years building out our ability to repair more and more products. So during the pandemic, when so many businesses shut down and technology became literally our lifeline in many cases to work from home, educate from home, or entertain from home, being able to repair that technology was pretty critical. And Apple told us that for a period of several weeks, we were the largest Apple authorized repair depot in North America. So, and not bad for a little old corner drugstore.
No.
But more importantly, on our weaknesses from the business perspective, these massive increases in volume in certain categories overnight really showed some of the weaknesses in our old system, that we relied too much on manual processes and that required good people to execute. And it's nothing against the people, but it was still a manual process that couldn't scale up to either get the throughput that our customers required or drive that opportunity to the bottom line that was being presented to us. And so in some cases, it negated any business advantage that we had from this additional volume that was coming through. It either hurt our reputation in things like our call center that just couldn't handle the volume of calls coming through, and or just the throughput of data that we were dealing with. So that certainly rose to the top and really brought forward a lot of our technology initiatives that we'd planned over a period of time, all had to be brought forward in a very quick fashion.
I love that. That's great context. I love the business drivers you talked about. I love the competitive edge that London Drugs take, and also your people strategy as well, just from a trust perspective.
Right.
One of the things that I'd like to ask you, you mentioned technology there quite a bit in terms of responding to the pandemic and dealing with the impact of the pandemic. Can you talk to us a little bit about what innovation and technology is doing for London Drugs as an overall business, and how you see technology and innovation playing a role in your growth and your business drivers?
Yeah. My personal belief is that a lot of times people start with the technology because it has become so good these days. And my belief is that's the wrong place to start. I think you have to be really clear on what problems you're trying to solve on behalf of your customer.
Yeah.
And I've been saying that a good retailer tries to solve customers' problems before they even knew they had that. That's that intangible difference when you go in with a retailer of any type in any sector, and you go, I don't know what it is about this retailer, but they just seem to get me. They just seem to have my back, and I don't. And that indescribable piece of the relationship that you're building with that retailer is because you have to be constantly thinking, what is our problems that our customers have, and how can we be that go-to solution for them? The reality is that customers really don't care about our problems as a retailer. They don't care that there's a worldwide shortage of the exact same thing in the middle of a pandemic. They want you to solve it for them. They don't care about your technology limitations, and you chose years ago to spend on X technology versus Y technology, and it hamstrung you during the pandemic. And they certainly won't pay extra for unique back-end processes that you develop because you thought you were so special, and it really isn't adding any value to the customer. So I think technology solutions are very important, and very important to the partners you select, because you have to understand the art of the possible. The technology part is, in no disrespect, because it is truly at times magical. When I think back to my original education in technology and where it's come from today, but because it's become so ubiquitous, customers take a lot of things as table stakes that we know are extremely difficult to execute, but that's the customer's expectations. So sitting down and trying to understand the art of the possible with technology, it's really where technology selection and implementation starts to go. And for us, we have a brand framework that should be in front of everyone's desk, and so many walls within our organization, stores, distribution, and the technology department. And it talks about taking new ways of taking care of people every day and going above and beyond the expected. And that's the core essence of what we do. And so we need to find technology partners that share that same philosophy about allowing us to take care of people every day in ways that feel that we're going above and beyond the expected.
Having said that, I hope you found a technology partner, Microsoft, that is supportive of that. And it's a nice segue into the next question, which is, could you talk a little bit about the journey and the role that Microsoft is playing and will in the future play in kind of the evolution of your business model and the outcomes that you're seeking to drive for the business?
Sure. So first of all, Microsoft and London Drugs have a long time history with each other, and so I can speak to that separately. But we have been a Microsoft shop for a long time, and we depend on our data analyst products, our operating system, our productivity tools, our cloud-based services like Azure, and a lot of our I call it plumbing, network and security type of stuff. So we have a long time trust in Microsoft products. And we've recently doubled down with Microsoft technology, really about making it around the customer, and how can we use your technology to better make our customer experience, second to none for a retailer like ourselves. And so over the last number of years, we've been implementing, again, Azure, Synapse, and started to use other products like Power BI to give our teams better views of the customer. But now it's time to take it to a different level. So we selected Dynamics 365.
I love the overall approach to embracing the true value prop of Microsoft by leveraging all the portfolios, right, and really adapting and enabling that towards your growth drivers and the outcomes you're trying to achieve as an organization. Can you share with us a little bit about the decision behind Dynamics 365 specifically?
Sure. Well, I mentioned just a minute ago that we've had a very long relationship with London Drugs, and to put it in perspective, and you know, a lot of people think it's urban myth, but it really is true, that there was this product that this then startup company created a spreadsheet, and its founder was also its chief salesman. And so Mr. Gates came up to Canada to try and sell this new spreadsheet-like product, and because we had one of the very first retail computer stores in Canada. And we're also, so besides selling some of the original retail products and business products through our computer departments, we were also somewhat of a pioneer organization with Microsoft technologies in business production, like NT4 and SQL 6.1. We were the very first retailer in Canada, for sure, to implement BizTalk as an enterprise integration tool. So especially with a lot of old disparate systems, that really was a savior for us and added a huge amount of value. So obviously, right off the top, there's a long history and relationship between these two organizations. More specific to the Dynamics product, we have a lot of old legacy systems like a traditional POS, supply chain, warehouse, finance, that have, you know, were great products at the time, all standalone, and thankfully with tools like BizTalk, we were able to get them to talk together. But they've, you know, one of our POS system is over 40 years old now. Our warehouse system is over 35 years old. And so you can just well imagine the amount of workarounds, manual processes, data integrity issues,
right,
storage issues, being able to just simply get one view of a customer or one view of a data point and create attributes to it to offer what we can today. So that's where we embarked on what I call the Galileo Initiative. And I know it's not a new project term, it's been used many times, but for us, Galileo, that very famous philosopher and Italian inventor, his original concept that we know today was that he was one of the first to create the idea that all the planets revolved around the sun. And I use that as an analogy for what we needed to do. We needed to have all our technology not pointed because finance wanted it or HR wanted it. It all had to point around the customer that comes into our store, and it had to have one view of the customer regardless of who was using it. So we broke the initiative into 4 major projects that the Dynamics product will be touching in all of these areas, and there are things like what has been used to be called point of sale. I like to call it the point of contact with the customer, through supply chain, loyalty, and automation to get to this one coordinated view of the data. And so we spent about 3 months evaluating different products in the marketplace, but more specifically Microsoft, and through the implementation partner DXC. And we know that there's no perfect match for any software in any business, but our belief is we have this invested infrastructure. We knew that a sister company had been looking at it for a POS solution that we're responsible for administering, and so we were looking at that. And it just made a lot of sense to bring the power of Microsoft to what we'd already done, and a tool set that people were accustomed to and nomenclature that people knew, with trusted teams, and that's how we arrived at 365.
That's awesome. And I know it goes without saying for Rashawn, but we're grateful for your business, Clint. So thank you very much for making the investments and for being with us for so long. And, you know, I've been in the business application side of technology for over 20 years. And one of the biggest impediments to business application deployments that I've seen, no matter what you're using, is change management, right? You know, the book Who Moved My Cheese, you're giving me a new way of doing something, and it's real. I mean, it's real, it's tangible, it's something that people have expertise built in. So what are you doing within your organization to tackle this issue of change management as it pertains to rolling out these new applications?
No, you're exactly right. And again, not to disrespect the technology, but often the technology is the easy part. You know, your implementer, your technology, you know what works. It's not an issue. So in so many cases, especially for ERP-like systems, what people forget is at the end of the day, you are dealing with people that are implementing this. Mm-hmm. And so one of the key things we do is we talk about that. We spend a lot of time talking to our managers and the key project leaders, and not just saying, hey, change is important, make sure change is done well, because quite frankly, Dr. William Bridges, who is very famous in the field of change management, has a saying that effectively it's not the change that does you in, it's the transition. And I think that that's what we spend a lot of time saying. How will we transition people? We spend a lot of time talking and reminding our managers about the psychology of change, where, look, London Drugs has a lot of people that it's not unusual. You find people like myself, 40, 45 years, very good people in all aspects of the business that have been doing things. And I mentioned our POS system as being 40 years old, 35 years old. And reminding our people and our leaders, it's not the change, but it's the fact that you're taking someone who has been very competent at a role for a very long time, and you're effectively changing their belief in their own competency, because they don't know the system. They're no longer subject matter experts. And so that comes right back to some really basic psychology principles like Maslow, about feeling secure and being able to achieve what you can. And so we spend a lot of time just asking people to look through that paradigm when they're implementing change, and don't use words like, oh, this is easy, this is a better process. Because when you use judgment words like this is a better process, it very well be that, but it really depends on your perspective. It's not better for the person that's a 30-year veteran who's the subject matter go-to expert in your area, and also an opinion leader that other people look up to. And better for them is the process that they know, because it's what's given them their reputation and strength. So being able to, again, using Dr. Bridges' work, talk about the neutral zone of change and creating that compelling draw through to the other side, not pushing people through change that don't want to go, but creating those reasons and making sure that those people feel just as confident and just as skilled on the other side of the change is a lot of it. You know, again, you can have the best technology in the world that makes the most sense, it's just huge. But if you don't have the people who can ultimately manage that for you, then you've really wasted a lot of your resources and more importantly, your potential for your customer.
Right. That's great context. And you know, change management is one thing, right? But as it pertains to user adoption and experience of the new platforms, how do you prepare end users for that to ensure there's a success rollout of the new platform?
Well, again, this is an area that's easy to talk about, but difficult to actually get done. But a lot of it is trusting your people. You know, just as we have a saying that customers are always smarter than us, we have a belief that our staff are always smarter than us. And so getting them involved early, making sure that they understand the compelling vision why we have to move and change, but getting them involved, touching the product through the sandboxes and playgrounds, creating an opportunity for them to have input into the art of the possible and to think about it from a customer's perspective, not from a person representing retail operations or HR or finance or supply chain, but think about it from a customer. What would be the ultimate customer experience that you yourself would like to receive, and then back it up from there. You can never go wrong when you're thinking about the customer first and how that's going to ultimately service them, because that, if you're in the retail business, your world revolves around customer satisfaction. So getting that involvement up front, key leaders, a lot of communication, keeping people up to date where the project plans are, arming staff with training opportunities wherever they can, listening to them and creating feedback loops. You know, just because it's been implemented successfully in other retailers, they could have in fact spotted a problem with an implementation. It could be, you know, a cassette that just for whatever reason wasn't built correctly for us, and making sure that they know that we value their input. And you know, I think modern project implementation techniques like Agile really do lend themselves to more involvement and get people seeing successes instead of the Big Bang theory of the classic large software implementations of the 90s and early 2000s. Also really helps for that.
Excellent. Well, Clint, we have a number of Canadian firms a little earlier in their process than you are. You're all the way through. They're evaluating us. We're grateful that in this environment there are a lot of companies that are looking at digitally transforming their organizations. So if you could, are there any lessons learned that you could impart to some of these other firms in Canada who are looking at Microsoft but haven't maybe worked with us in the past that you think would be helpful as they go along their journey?
Well, I guess one of the things is obviously we believe that your product for us really allows us to be different for our customer. We are, you know, everyone's got a customer, and that customer has lots of different choices. And as I said at the outset, those choices are worldwide today, they're not local. And so by leaning on the expertise of a worldwide company that is known for having world-class solutions really does allow you to think at a different scale, whether you see yourself as a small or a medium business, or you see yourself as a very large business. You know, we see Microsoft as, you know, and its heart is a framework and tool company, and we think that's your key strength. Certainly, that's what we believe going into this. And so technology changes over time, but one thing that we've believed is the utility of establishing on a framework like Microsoft allows that framework to survive over time. As a president and as the business leader, one of my chief goals is when we invest in something, what's the greatest utility I can get from that over the longest period of time to really leverage that investment. And yes, there's some world-class companies that do some of the individual components perhaps even better than D365, but they're not thinking of their bigger picture. They're not thinking of the enterprise. They're not thinking of the customer at home as well as the customer at the office. And we think that a company like yours that has that mindset is a really key component of making sure your investment. We also believe that from what we can see that your tools and the technology that you're delivering is really simple and really easy to understand, very different than what we currently have and very different than what we've seen with a lot of, especially even maintaining the back end. And that's going to be instrumental for allowing people to feel comfortable, low learning curves. There's always learning curves, but you know, you can make things more difficult for people, and it's with a tool set and nomenclature that a lot of people use every day in their office suite. So it's not that big of a stretch, and those little small things, even something to do with font size and type that people have been accustomed to, if you're not a power user, then that can be a big consideration. And I think that Microsoft also has a lot of advice. What we've seen in the time we've been working on this project is you've been able, either directly through Microsoft itself or a recommended implementation partner like DXC, it's advice and counsel that you've given us that's allowed us to look at this a little bit differently. It's not a my way or the highway, so rigid that you can't adopt the business practices. And that's really critical. At the outset, I described that London Drugs has a unique business model, and that a lot of original ERP software was designed for a production type of environment, and it's been sometimes challenging to apply that to the retail environment, where we think Microsoft has taken a bit of a different view, where it's looked at productivity tools and the end users for so long. It naturally is embedded into the philosophy of how it delivers an enterprise type projects like what we're looking at.
Well, thank you. Very much appreciate that feedback.
Yeah, that's incredible feedback. I have to ask you, looking back at your selection process and your partnership with Microsoft and DXC, is there anything you would say that you could have done differently?
Well, I think one of the challenges we always have at London Drugs, because we are so unique, is finding an appropriate reference for whatever product we're using. We have a very large SKU base, and that mix that I described of a large SKU base with a lot of services, we find that over time that a company will do one or the other, but very few do what we do. And so, you guys helped us find some really great implementations around the world that we could talk to that had the elements we do. And I think that was a bit of advice that I encourage you to do, is that anyone listening is to make sure that you spend the time trying to find out a business that is as close to yours as possible, and that remains critical. I mean, there's an old saying in human resources and human behavior that behavior predicts, and so that's why references and seeing the implementations well done, and also talking specifically about what happens when things go wrong. How does your implementation partner react? How does the Microsoft react? And building a bit of a street credibility when you talk to enough references. That's really important too, and I thank Microsoft and DXC for finding those and allowing us to have unfettered access to those companies.
Excellent.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you so much, Clint. This brings us to a conclusion. Really appreciate the insight that you've shared, and I'm certain that the viewers watching this will have an appreciation for it too as well. We look forward to your success. We're absolutely committed to London Drugs as a partner, and we look forward to celebrating more successes with you and the greater teams.
Great, and likewise.